Thank you also very much.
Mr. President, we take a couple questions.
Thanks. I have a helicopter waiting for me to take off. We're going to have plenty of time to talk about a lot of this.
Do you think the Supreme Court is broken, in your view?
I think the Supreme Court has made some terrible decisions.
But these decisions made from the Supreme Court.
Will you reconsider your previous opposition?
Do you want to see the court overturn? You just said you want to see the court protect the Second Amendment. Do you want to see the court overturn Roe v. Wade?
Well, if we put another 2 or perhaps 3 justices on, that's really what's going to be, will happen. And that'll happen automatically, in my opinion, because I am putting pro-life justices on the court. I will say this, it will go back to the states, and the states will then make a determination.
Donald has said he's in favor. I will defend Roe v. Wade, and I do not believe the government should be making it. And I can tell you the government has no business in the decisions that women make.
Nobody has business doing what I just said, doing that as late as 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 days prior to birth.
Yesterday, I spoke about the Supreme Court's shocking decision striking down Roe v. Wade. We've had a lot of discussion about that in our whole household. You think is it? Anyway, Jill and I know how painful and devastating the decision is for so many Americans, and I mean so many Americans. A decision is implemented by states. My administration is going to focus on how they administer it and whether or not they violate other laws, like deciding to not allow people to cross state lines to get public health services. And we're going to take actions to protect women's rights and reproductive health.
The strength of our nation has always been that despite the odds and the obstacles, we push to move forward, that we are guided by what we see that can be, unburdened by what has been. Remember, our nation also faced, and we can talk about current day as well, but then in particular, we faced a historic economic challenge. But together with you, the President and I were not deterred. I think we all agree and know inflation is still too high. We are seeing higher prices at the store because supply chains slowed down dramatically, and higher prices at the gas pump, in large part because of Putin's unprovoked war. And families across our nation, in particular working families, are feeling the effect. I know you know the President and I are using every tool at our disposal to lower cost, including the cost of gas.
I rise in opposition to the amendment. I'll be brief because I think this is a really simple point. I don't believe it's the place of the United States and our taxpayers to harden NATO facilities against perceived impacts of climate change. It's not any secret that many of these European countries have gone all in on this green energy quest, and look where it's gotten them. They're now hanging by a thread. They're practically begging the Russian Federation to not further restrict their natural gas supply, and the United States is scrambling to provide energy security to our allies. So we're already moving heaven and earth to make sure their lights stay on, and it would be an inappropriate use of precious American taxpayer dollars to fund their climate change remediation. These European climate change requirements are their business. It's not ours, and we shouldn't be paying for it at a time when we have, by the way, a $30 trillion federal debt. I urge a no vote on this amendment. I just think it's common sense. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. I want to associate myself with the comments of Mr. Banks. I just think this is outrageous, and I think if our constituents back home knew what was going on in this committee with this amendment, they would be outraged. I suspect when they find out, they'll be outraged. Look, this is not the place for culture wars. I get the zeal for diversity, and no one is against that. But to mandate that every contractor that does business, and it will affect every contractor because there's really no limit. It says any contractor agreement valued greater than $150,000 between the Secretary of Defense and one or more other persons creating obligations. It includes first-tier subcontracts, sub-agreements, transactions. This is everybody. So we're going to say that you cannot do business with the Department of Defense if you don't have a diversity and inclusion board, if you don't make public all of these sort of intrusive questions about gender identity and orientation and all that. Listen, That has nothing to do with the merits of whether someone can deliver a contract to DOD. I just think this is not the place for it. I respect my colleague, Mr. Brown. I respect the zeal, but we're inserting culture wars into the Department of Defense at the worst possible time. This is very serious business. This is a very dangerous time on the world stage, and we all know it. We're playing games with this at a time when it could affect our national security. I think it will. I think you're going to block out an entire group of persons and contractors and good faith people who do good work just because you don't like their internal corporate policies. It's wrong. It's wrong-headed. It will lead, I think, to disastrous results, and it would have a terrible effect on the economy. For those reasons, I oppose the amendment. I hope my colleagues will do the same.